Brooke's here, Robin's here, Karoo is not here. Today, we're talking about every single major change that was in the second season of the live-action One Piece, alongside with all the many Easter eggs that production has sprinkled throughout the series. Welcome to another round of the live-action. We're gonna go episode by episode, breaking down how this season departed from the source material and what little background details they have worked into each single episode as a reward for all the hardcore anime and manga fans. So without further ado, let's get started with episode 1, where the big changes come right out the gates because, hello nurse, hello Miss All Sunday ma'am, because they've made this second-in-command member of Baroque Works the big looming threat throughout season 2, kind of like what they did with Garp's role in the original first season. Season 1, of course, already did its own fair share to foreshadow this shady criminal organization, but here we get Mr. Five, Miss Valentine, and Miss All Sunday conducting an all-out assault on Shellstown to recover the body of Mr. Seven, setting them up as the overarching big antagonists of this saga. Now, in the original manga, we of course don't get this character's introduction or the name of Baroque Works as an organization until Whiskey Peak. And because this is a One Piece channel, and I'm gonna assume that many and probably most of my viewers have either watched or read the original One Piece or don't really mind spoilers here, I do hope that you don't mind that I'm gonna call her Nico Robin, which you'd already know if you actually made it all the way through episode 8 anyways. Now, the title card gives us a big Roger mustache and his sword, which is called Ace. Now, I won't be talking about every single title bumper since a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory, but Ace seemed absolutely worthwhile to mention. But after we reunite with the crew, we get a nice little nod to the hardcore fanbase with Nami's pointed statement, and you thought we were gonna skip Loketown after the arc was originally absent from season 1, and a We Are callback, which takes us to the first island of the season. But before even landing at Loketown, we get taken all the way back to Roger's execution first, where we see him talking to his longtime frenemy, Monkey D. Garp. And it's real nice that the live action is actually putting the fact that they're total homies on full display here. I was worried for a second, but then, the tension actually breaks and they get along just fine. But fans familiar with the original will probably have noticed something big about this scene specifically, mainly that it's happening crazy early. We actually don't get Roger asking Garp to take care of his own son in the manga until Marineford. And since we haven't been introduced to Ace yet whatsoever, the implication that the live action is making here is very clear. They want you to assume that Luffy is actually Roger's son, which was actually a fan theory for many years and years, so I actually kind of love that for the people who have this as their first One Piece experience. It's a cool bit of misdirection for the new people so they can then experience some twists and turns later on. Now, once the Straw Hats finally arrive at Loketown, or shall I say Easter Egg Town, it's conveniently just in time for the Roger Execution Anniversary Festival. What good timing, a live-action edition that doesn't exist in the manga. And this of course means there's gonna be so much room to plant a ton of Easter eggs throughout the background. For starters, there's a wanted poster for Pedro of all pirates. Interesting choice. There's the Hero of the Marines opera poster, strangely with God Valley reference, despite it being erased from history, allegedly at least. But a little bit of a nod to the recent manga readers, where the arc has actually just been printed in the most recent volume. And one of the weirdest additions, in my opinion, is that we see a Man-Mayer building and a Figurlin Square winery referencing two Celestial Dragon family names. Now, the Celestial Dragons as a whole concept haven't even been introduced in the live action, and the implications here are actually really interesting. In the source material, the world nobles kind of keep to themselves up in Marijua mostly, and the Holy Knights seem to be very secretive, but here in the live action, apparently their influence has spread as far as Loketown, with their family names plastered on various buildings. And since it's actually two in the same town, it does seem more than just a cheeky, ooh, look at this name you recognize, and much more of an actual world-building flourish by the live-action creators. But of course, there are plenty more little Easter eggs during the shopping spree we get. Nami's buying maps instead of modeling clothes, right? But we do see Hanger, the clothes seller, there in the background. There's a garb hat for sale, a giant-sized Bragman book, the history of the Marines penned by the Fleet Admiral, Admiral Kong, and Smoker's introduction has added Koze being arrested, but in the original, this is the pirate who actually escapes from capture and is then done in by Tashigi instead. Then, on the way to the sword store, Zoro slips in a nod to his great sense of direction, and in the sword store itself, Ippon Matsu's mother/wife was actually cut. And I don't say that in the sense that he married his mom, but in the manga it's his wife, but 4Kids for some reason decided to change her to his mom, because reasons I guess. But while everybody's getting their shopping done, one of the biggest Loketown changes in the entire live action does occur. Bartolo Mayo here. During that Dressrosa arc, he was kind of retconned into the story, witnessing Luffy's attempted execution. Here though, he just straight on fully interacts with multiple Straw Hats trying to take actual advantage of Luffy before eventually becoming quite the fan. Now, I personally think that he probably could have been just more of a background Easter egg character, because now his superfan nature feels a little bit weird after he's gotten to interact with the gang for quite a bit, but we'll take it. In the battle against Buggy, the changes just keep coming as well. First off, he gets Bunny's name wrong and recognizes Alvida immediately, which was admittedly pretty funny. In the manga, it's actually the opposite. He does get Buggy's name right, but cannot for the life of him recognize Alvida in her new look. Now in the live action, Buggy slaps some sea stone cuffs on him here, while in the original, Luffy just goes exploring on top of the executioner's stand just for the funsies, and Kabaji slaps the regular stocks on him while he's up there. And it's actually kind of ironic because the actual real first introduction of sea stone as a concept in the manga is when it's used in net form against Buggy and Alvida. After his capture, Luffy is then put on trial by Buggy and Alvida, which I feel just has to be a reference to a very specific episode of Batman the Animated Series, where the Joker does pretty much the exact same thing with the wig and all. And during the battle, and even before that throughout Loketown, there's a lot of plush pandas everywhere and toy pandas, which kind of feels like an absolute legit Panda Man cameo, sort of. It's a lot of pandas. Richie the Lion just remains missing, and wow, you're telling me that Smoker could have his Billower bike, but they're not gonna adopt Buggy's Chop Chop car made out of his own body parts? What a travesty. Now in the climax of this episode, Zoro clashes with Tashigi in a pretty similar encounter to, the source material, but he doesn't scream at her about how much she looks like Kuina. Dragon, very tragically, does have eyebrows, and as he exits, they do show Sabo with him, though this time around, Dragon doesn't actually come out of nowhere here as he does in the manga, but, he's actually creeping on the Straw Hats early on as well. Now, in a very interesting added scene after the Straw Hats manage to escape, Tashigi is drowning her sorrows at a bar when Robin and her have more sexual tension than I've ever seen in my entire life, while she tries to recruit the swordsman from the Marines into Baroque works. And then Smoker is also added here, I guess. His reaction to Luffy's laughter is placed in this scene instead of earlier in the battle, and the fact that Roger used to frequent this bar seems like a nod to the anime-only scene, like the filler scene, where Luffy goes to Roger's favorite bar. Similarly to the elephant tuna, which is also referenced to an anime filler-only sequence where Sanji does a cooking competition. And missing from the end of Loketown is actually the barrel scene where the Straw Hats declare their dreams because, well, they already took care of that at the end of season 1 before they ever got there. Which means now, on to episode numero dos. Nami explains the concept of the calm belt, but we don't actually get the accidental excursion into the calm belt where the ship is then surrounded and actually lifted up by the massive Sea Kings. The only thing truly in danger of the Sea Kings here is Tomorrow Studios' special effect budget, it seems. Then on the way through Reverse Mountain, the gates with the very suspicious serpent depictions are also absent, but once we get into the Grand Line, alright, now the changes really start heaping up. In the manga, the ship only gets swallowed in the first place because Luffy actively comes out swinging first and attacking Laboon, and then meanwhile, after the ship is swallowed, Luffy finds a strange hatch on Laboon's back. Turns out there is no hatch on this whale in the live action. In fact, Laboon has zero infrastructure installed inside of him, especially not his stomach being painted to look like a sky, and Crocus's vacation home being built inside of that whale. Now, Usopp does add it as like a little Easter egg at the end though, saying that Laboon would be big enough to have like an entire island inside of him and live inside of him. But yeah, no, Crocus in the live action just lives up at the lighthouse, and instead of the eternal injections, he uses a technology that honestly I think should be more common in the real world: medicinal harpoons. What happens instead, of course, is that Luffy wakes up on the Twin Capes surrounded by crocus flowers. See what you did there, and whispers, 5 more minutes, Dadan. A very nice reference to his adoptive mother, who we don't really learn about until much later after the war in the original story. Also breaking my heart is Crocus's introduction, because he still mentions his zodiac and blood type, but they did not copy the legendary extreme close-up from the anime, which I was really hoping for. Now, while he reads the newspaper, we do see some headlines involving the Galela and a missing Alabasta princess with the Alabasta symbol. Meanwhile, back with Smokey, Garp's back in the story with special guests Kobe and Helmeppo, pretty much so that Garp can ask Smoker to go after Baroque works, specifically in a very big change from Smoker's unilateral decision in the manga to hunt down Luffy no matter what. Oh, and conveniently, he can also give us a bunch of exposition about Baroque works this way as well. Garp actually also mentions Smoker's Sea Stone Jite, and while Kobe and Helmeppo are playing the water shooting game, you can actually see some fake Yagara bolts that are actually from Water 7. Now, the best change for this episode specifically, though, just has to be early Brook. Having the foresight now to know that Brook is just going to be a huge part of Laboon's backstory lets him show up all the way back here at Reverse Mountain instead of kind of retconning him in during Thriller Bark. And we get to hear the full-on Bing Sake version of Luffy also knowing the song, which I believe was actually established back with Shanks in Season 1 a little bit. This, of course, then allows the big connection with Luffy and Laboon in the end to be through singing Bing Sake, which is way sweeter than shoving a mast into Laboon's head in an act of extreme man-on-whale violence. I would not have wanted to see that specifically in the live action. Not at all. Then we have Baroque works. Here, Mr. Nine and Ms. Wednesday appear to just be trapped in a shipwreck when they run into the crew, which honestly, I can kind of see why they would have wanted to change that from the original goal in the story, which was actually wanting to harvest Laboon's whale meat. Much better optics, especially since the showrunners know that Vivi's gonna turn good, like, in the next episode, pretty much. They also really go and telegraph Vivi's good, true nature pretty heavily here, with her helping to save Usopp from falling into acid, and then Luffy being like, I have such a good feeling about her. And once they get back on land, there's another difference, with Crocus being the one to explain the concept of a lock pose in the original, and Ms. Wednesday / Vivi taking some of that role in the new version. Now, in the live action, Crocus talks to the picture of him and Roger about Laugh Tale and the One Piece, but doesn't actually tell the Straw Hats about the final island in his log pose explanation as he does in the manga. Next up in the title card for episode 3. 1, 2, 3, yes, works. And here you can actually hear Igaram and Karoo's quacking in the intro just a little bit if you pay attention. The episode opens with a lot of really strange weather, but less actual death-defying navigation on Nami's part. But she does other things in the scene. I guess the internet seems to love it. Who am I to take that away from them? We also see Usopp start to build his Snow Queen, but he's not capable of anime Usopp's photorealistic snow sculpture skills, it seems. Sanji's rocking his Doskoi Panda apron, which he does a few times throughout the sequence, which is an actual fashion brand that exists in the One Piece universe. But one of the greatest changes throughout all of episode 3 is probably Zoro's Mihawk hallucination. Giving Zoro a much stronger character arc this season, his defeat at the Warlord's hand is actually still haunting him, and I honestly think this was just a fantastic setup for the entire Whiskey Peak massacre, as well as a great chance to see more of Stephen John Ward playing Mihawk, who was a fan favorite in the first season as well. Then there are a lot of minor changes throughout this episode. Igaram doesn't disguise his name as Igarapoi here, which in Japanese just means a little bit like Igaram, basically. We don't see the Unluckies hanging out on the top of the Cactus Island. In fact, the Unluckies make far fewer appearances overall in the live-action version of these events. And there are a ton of little Easter eggs while the Straw Hats party on Whiskey Peak as well. Usopp lies about fighting off zombies, which is funny because it shows that the live-action writing staff is able to place a lot more actual future events in his own lies, further solidifying his trend that his lies tend to come true, which is something that actually also happens in the story as well. And with this added lie, he will actually go on and fight plenty of zombies if the live action ever makes it all the way to Thriller Bark. Luffy comments on how much he wants a musician, pretty classic, and the dearly departed Julep Pirates are actually taken from Django's cover story. Ironic that their bodies made it in, but Django didn't make it into the live action. But we'll take it. Vivi's and Igaram's true identities and intentions are much more heavily telegraphed and just outright revealed much earlier here. And whereas Zoro is actually all alone during his original Baroque Work challenge, being the only one who clocks that something's going on, in this version, Luffy, Nami, and Zoro all three find out roughly around the same time that something's going on, instead of most of the crew being sound asleep. Now sadly, we did not get Zoro's very cool moonlit rooftop reveal where he challenges all of Baroque Works, which, by the way, is the first time Baroque Works is actually name-dropped in the manga. Instead, he just fights the 100 men led by Mr. 9, while Igaram and Ms. Wednesday are with Luffy. In the show here, Zoro actually is counting all 100 kills, which is a very fun addition and kind of reminds me a little bit of the Lord of the Rings thing that Legolas and Gimli have going on. But that brings me also to both the best and the worst change in Whiskey Peak. The worst change being no Karoo. And I kinda get it, Netflix. I really do. Super spot buildups don't come cheap these days, I'm sure, but boy do I miss the duck. Vivi mentions duck riding on Little Garden, but it's just not the same, like hinting at it and referencing it. Maybe we'll get it in Alabasta in Season 3. But a very much completely welcome change is getting rid of the Luffy versus Zoro fight. It never really made sense. Rumor has it that an editor suggested that Oda pit them against each other because the arc didn't have enough sus, but it was always pretty much out of character for Luffy to just swing at his swordsman buddy, instead of trying to ascertain the situation whatsoever. Then once Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine show up, things actually continue to change. Mr. 9 doesn't go on to protect Vivi in this version, he just refuses to rat her out. And Mr. 5 blows up Igaram. Now, does it make sense for the explosion guy to explode the guy? Yeah, it does, but it also kind of means we didn't get Igaram trying to disguise himself as Vivi and set sail on a decoy ship, only to be blown up by Miss All Sunday instead. Which brings us to episode 4 and Miss All Sunday's canon introduction, which instead of happening right as they're setting sail from Whiskey Peak in the manga, appears to happen on the open ocean. And as the crew is attacking this intruder, she has actually taken Sanji's gun, which is probably a good choice. It didn't really make sense that he would have one, yet alone pointed at a hot lady. Not very Sanji-like. Robin's actual discussion with the Straw Hat plays out pretty much verbatim to the manga version, but as she leaves, she just kind of falls backwards into the ocean. Like, there has to be a deleted shot or a scene or something here, right? Because in the original, she leaves on her cool turtle boat, but here it looks like she just magically teleports away. I don't know, maybe she actually did unlock teleportation early in this version of the story. And sadly, after that interruption, Vivi apparently forgets, what she was actually saying and never reveals the true identity of Baroque Works' leader until the end of episode 8 because, I guess we needed a cool cliffhanger for the end of the season, which, kind of stops halfway through the Alabasta saga, saving Alabasta for season 3. Now, as the gang pulls up to Little Garden, there is no Bragman Louis Arnott quote, which I'm a bit sad about, but I'll forgive them since they did give me the big Bragman book in Loketown. Remember, Zoro and Sanji go hunting as a team in this one, fighting over who has landed the killing blow on a T-Rex instead of going their separate ways hunting. In the manga, Luffy rides a pterodon. No such luck here, sadly. And here Luffy and Vivi just kind of pull up to the barbecue, but in the original, they meet when Dory decapitates the brontosaurus that Luffy had been riding on. Though I guess maybe this is another one that was probably best left unadapted. In general, I thought the reduction in violence was interesting in this version to season 1, where season 1, episode 1 just starts with Zoro cutting someone in half. And I think they were just like, no, we gotta make this a lot more PG for a different and younger audience. Way less blood and way less violence in this one. And then, of course, hanging out with the giants, we get some crazy Easter eggs. First, he name drops the Atom Tree, he name drops the sun god Nika, and he even has a statue of Nika looking like Gear 5 Luffy, which is just kind of insane at this point in the story, but we do love to see it, and, kind of makes sense that they wanted to put it somewhere in there. Strangely though, he doesn't mention the war god Elbaf, who's mentioned in the manga version of Little Garden and was revealed to be an actual character very recently in the manga, but I'll take Nika over the war god any day. Now, the funniest of his statue collection just has to be that of Loki though, using his initial very wrong looking silhouette design from when he's mentioned during Whole Cake Island, which just looks nothing like the real deal, but it's a very fun knot. The Viking funeral for Igaram's hanky is a little bit of a nice touch that gives Vivi some extra development here, and also is maybe a little nod at what later happens to, the Going Merry. Brogy's invitation to Nami and Usopp plays out pretty much similarly in the manga, except that they both play dead, and Brogy's having you for lunch isn't phrased in a way that could be that easily misconstrued here. In the original, it's pretty clear he just wants to hang out. And while they're hanging out, Brogy actually mentions delicious semla, and Usopp lies about fighting a mole monster with a 5-ton hammer, something we could very well see him do in season 3. Also, unless I somehow completely missed it somehow, I don't think they ever mentioned how long it would take for the log post to reset here, which was this huge reoccurring plot point in the original, since they literally would have had to wait for over a year to hang with Dory and Brogy for it to reset. Miss Golden Week is introduced a whole lot earlier here, giggling around and splattering various straw hats, turning Nami high as hell, and giving Zoro the giggles. What drugs did you take, Zoro? Mushrooms? I don't know. It's kind of funny because early on in Little Garden in the manga, Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week are shown on an entirely different island before they ever come here. And speaking of her, Miss Golden Week is probably one of the biggest and best changes all season, because they have made her an actual character. She was always one of the least fleshed out Baroque Works agents in the manga, in the anime, but the fine folks over at Netflix have actually fixed that by making her a complete and utter terrifying psychopath. The battle between Dory and Brogy actually plays out extremely differently in the live action. The explosive ale is drunk by Brogy instead of Dory here, and it's right as they're about to fight instead of actually beforehand when they're in their separate parts of the island, because in the manga, Dory actually blames Luffy for planning the explosives, and the two have a fight, which I really would have loved to see a lot. Luffy punching a giant. All of that then actually was what led to Dory being the one who loses the fight against Brogy, while in the live action version, Brogy's actually cut down and Dory is turned into a wax statue over in Brogy's cave for the biggest part of the entire arc, I guess. And this pretty much sidelines both giants for the rest of Little Garden, whereas they were so much more involved and active in the action in the original. But that, on the other end, of course, gave us a lot more time to spend with Baroque Works, with Mr. 3 finally coming into the fold, and he really takes the stage in episode 5. And man, does David Desmalchian actually really give us an all-star performance right there. This version of Mr. 3 really plays up the artist aspect of the character, a perfect counterpart for this Miss Golden Week. In the manga, he talks way more about loving Earl Grey tea than he does about being an artist, but I think that's a very good change to make. Now, in the original, Mr. 3 is all about remaining unseen and using trickery. Their plan is also much more focused on capturing the giants for their bounties instead of just straight up trying to eliminate the Straw Hats. But this new version of the character has a much more sadistic edge, with him floating the idea of killing Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine, but no one's got a more sadistic edge, I think, than Miss Golden Week with her new Wild Luffy Tea Party torture scene where she just stabbed him in the hand with a paintbrush. Like, dude, what? Originally, she really didn't do all that much in general until the final battle. She spends her time napping and having a picnic, while Mr. 3 does pretty much the entire work, and then she pulls out the betrayal black on Luffy to try to get him to stop saving the crew. She's more of a supporting role. Her job is mainly to just paint Mr. 3's wax sculptures, which he doesn't really need here. So instead, we just get the terrifying Luffy scene, which, I don't know, really had me sweating, I gotta say. Sanji's trip to the Wax Chateau is obviously fun. The Straw Hat dossiers are drawn in manga style, which is kind of cool. Mr. 3 has some fun art on his walls, like girls with wax, like girl with the wax earring. In the original, Sanji's whole call with Mr. Zero doesn't actually happen until after the entire battle is over, so this version works better, I think, for, you know, climax purposes. In the manga, Mr. 3 never traps the crew inside his little wax house. He just candle locks them and then puts them in the giant candle wax cake thing, I guess. Zoro and Nami were never affected by Golden Weeks' paint either. Instead, Zoro goes straight to the conclusion that the best thing to do in the situation is cutting off his own legs. I do like the idea though of him not being able to cut through the wax that's as strong as steel, because it does set up his fight with Mr. 1 in the next season really well too. And in the live action, he actually raises his sword triumphantly because he believes in Luffy, while in the original, it's the much funnier, so he'll be doing a cool pose forever. Mr. 5 also takes a look at another newspaper, and we get more with this newspaper than any of the others. Wapol's pirate crew is mentioned, the Doskoy Panda brand. You can read a lot about the Hero of the Marines musical review, in which a star is compared to Victoria Sindri, who's this character here. There's an article about the Chocho Pet Shop by Yanino Chinode, a canonical newspaper reporter in the real One Piece world. The final battle with Mr. 3 is very different. They take away Mr. 3's candled champion suit, and there's no final showdown in Brogy's cave with a waxed up Dory. Instead, the fight finishes out with the wax statues in the forest. I kind of personally like the manga version a little bit more. Instead of trying and failing to get the correct Mr. 3, Luffy just immediately clocks the right one just based on his instincts. I think they could have even used the scene to give a little bit of hockey foreshadowing, maybe potentially. Could have been kind of cool. In the end then, the farewells play out pretty similar though. Dory and Broggy actually give the names of the Bruiser Axe and the Terry Sword, which were named in data books originally, much later. And in the manga, they actually don't try to stop their battle before being reminded about the hunting competition. They just remember the original reason for their fight. And as the crew triumphantly sails away, Zoro sips on a Mikio beer, probably named for background joke character Mikio Ito, a fellow mangaka that Oda placed in a bounty poster very early in the story. With Drum Island, things then continue to change a ton. Because why is Wapol hanging out in Crocodile's evil lair? Like, they're definitely doing the same thing as last season when they tried to build up more interconnectedness when they introduced Arlong earlier and connected him with some of the other villains in the story. Now, I do like this as a new introduction instead of randomly running into the Straw Hats on the ocean, but Robin giving Wapol his devil fruit kind of feels a little bit strange to me. We're not exactly sure, of course, when he actually ate his real devil fruit in the, manga, but I always kind of assumed that that's why his mouth was all metal. So a little bit weird. I do, though, like the idea of him being a Baroque Works funder and tying him into the larger storyline, but having him get the devil fruit specifically from him right before heading back to Drum Island just feels a little bit off timeline-wise. Also, why would Robin and Crocodile care if Wapol takes back Drum Island? But before the crew ever gets to Drum, we first cut over to Smoker and Tashigi for a new side quest subplot thing, because in the original version, Tashigi just intercepts the Mr. Prince call from their marine ship while they already have Mr. 11 in custody. Here though, we're actually shown a full-on infiltration mission to a marine comms outpost on Renee's Island, which is where they actually canonically captured Mr. 11, but they did that off screen. And during this infiltration, Smoker also fights an added Miss Thursday who was not shown in the manga at all. And while I like the idea of, keeping a Smoker subplot going for the fans throughout this season, it does seem like a pretty overinflated way of showing it, as opposed to just Garp's active pursuit of Luffy in the first season, which I preferred over whatever this is. Now finally, on Drum Island, the village is shown with very significant damage after Blackbeard's siege apparently. Now the original does mention Blackbeard as the reason that Walpole flees, though it does feel a lot more recent here, because Walpole actually left years ago in the manga. Also, interestingly enough, there was no mention of Ace pursuing Blackbeard in this version. They put in Sabo, but then no Ace here. Also, Zoro feels a lot more involved this time around instead of sleeping and keeping watch over the ship. And when I said the village is shown, I meant village singular, because in the manga we actually visit a few different towns throughout Drum Kingdom, both in the present timeline and in the flashback, but we really only see the one village throughout the live action right here. But the real Easter eggs, of course, come in with Vivi's Reverie flashback, which in the manga Drum Island arc is actually just a couple of pages couched in the larger Chopper flashback. But for this one, wow, do they get to sprinkle a bunch of cool stuff in that Oda hadn't even written or maybe not even thought of when he wrote those original chapters. We see a ton of characters that are introduced in the actual Reverie arc in the manga. I won't name them all, but we do see Abra, Hamburger of the Bollywood Kingdom, and Tacos of the Shishano Kingdom. Pangea Castle is finally formally name-dropped, and here Walpole actually just strikes Kid Vivi very clearly on purpose instead of trying to say it was an accident as he does in the manga. An especially nice touch, I think, is Igaram wiping her tears with the special hanky that we Viking funeral burned earlier on. Luffy climbing up to the castle is extremely different here. First off, there are no angry rabbits, and the only hiking bear we see is in the end credits of the next episodes. I do think we do get to see one of the rabbits earlier in the cabin though, where it's just kind of its head. Secondly, Walpole's not even on the island yet, while he's already invaded and is actively chasing Luffy at this point in the story. And there's notably no avalanche that takes out Sanji before Luffy even starts his climb. This time, Sanji falls and hurts himself midway through the climb, with Luffy catching him fairly close to the top instead of carrying him in his mouth the entire way. But that brings us to episode 7, an episode that was much harder to take notes on because I was just crying most of the time. And you know what else makes me cry all the time? My beautiful Patreons. They make me cry tears of joy, that is, because they help make this channel possible and help make talking about One Piece be my literal job, which is awesome. So if you want to support me and my team, who, we're all watching it together and binging through it, and get some pretty cool rewards while you're at it, go check that out. Back to the comparison and the Easter eggs. This flashback overall was pretty much on point, I think. Like, this was the best episode of the season, hands down, right? Give Hero Look the Emmy, please. Just do it, please, right? But that doesn't mean there still weren't some changes and Easter eggs. First off, I don't think they ever actually called Chopper's fruit the human fruit here. They also didn't show us reindeer carnage with Chopper actually being harmed by his fellow reindeers. An Easter egg I absolutely love is Hero Look humming Boku wa Doctor Tony Chopper. Hero Look's last stand played out a little bit differently too. He didn't sit and pour the sake cup in this version. It happened inside the throne room instead of outside. And honestly, a lot of things happened inside the castle instead of on the outside. Dalton also doesn't show his zone fruit here with Chopper because Walpole hasn't shown up yet, which means he hasn't shown it in the present day storyline. Like, after Luffy hears Chopper's story, he hangs the flag up inside instead of on the flagpole that's outside, I guess, but oh well, I guess interior shots were just so much more cost effective or looked better than filming all the action outside the castle. Maybe it was too cold, but overall, episode 7, the best. Mwah. Oh, hi Robin, you're really everywhere this season, huh? Even on Drum Island. Well, you're lucky I literally can't get enough of you. Calling Vivi the Desert Lily is a very cool touch, and I do have to wonder if it's a reference to her ancestor, Nefertari Lily. Dalton tries to stop Walpole's invasion with his zone transformation, but puts up even less of a fight than in the manga, which wasn't a lot to begin with, so it's kind of impressive. They did a worse job here in the story even. Dalton, come on, you can do better. After that, Walpole somehow managed to get into the castle before his men even attack the town. Now in the original, Walpole really announces his whole arrival as he invades the kingdom, and again, invaded the kingdom much earlier, attacking Luffy before Luffy ever got to climb the mountain. It all kind of left me feeling like even though Drum Island had 3 episodes to work with, Walpole himself doesn't really get much build up at all, surprisingly, but while they're waiting for Walpole to get to the castle, Usopp invents a grappling hook that helps Vivi get up there as well. A pretty nice, cool new touch hinting at Usopp's craftsmanship. Sanji has a beautiful conversation with Nami where he references his childhood cooking for his mother, and his mother even calls him Little Prince, just giving us the little, morsels of the Germa flashback much earlier. Now, Walpole does not have this army of horrible amalgamation soldiers in the original, but I guess at least it gives Zoro and Usopp something to do down here, since they're still down here in the live action, I guess. Though, it is a little bit weird that even Zoro is completely powerless against them until Luffy shuts them down by taking out Walpole. That's a little bit weird and disappointing. The actual final battle, though, changes a lot. It's all indoors now. The only thing that really hurts about it being inside is that Luffy shielding the flag outside is way less cool when he's not physically holding up the broken flagpole. Walpole also barely uses any of his Munch techniques. There is no Chess Marimo fusion, which kind of makes sense. That seems like a very hard thing to adapt. There's no slim up Walpole of him eating himself. There's also a fun line where he says, "Let's see what a devil fruit user actually tastes like," which might be a reference to the 9th movie in which he eats his own brother and gains his devil fruit power. Tragically, there's also no Robson the woolly hippo. This season has not been kind to our animal companions, and the live action does not like them, it seems. I can only assume that all of the making an animal look decent budget went to Chopper and I guess Laboon here, at least as it pertains to his cute form, because his manly form does look, unfortunately, extremely cursed. And speaking of Chopper, his techniques are basically completely gone as well from the show. He doesn't use any of his point system, and he does bring his rumble balls and show them off for an Easter egg at the end, but for some reason does not even think about using them in battle. Chopper's sleigh also isn't seen until the end, but in a heartwarming moment, Zoro picks up Chopper to put him in his favorite seat. And of course, we get the big season 3 tease, finally getting a clear view of Joe Manganiello's Sir Crocodile alongside with a Nico Robin name drop that doesn't actually happen until the Alabasta climax in the original story. And a swimming banana gator takes us into the credits. Oh, there's an animal there. I guess he counts as a companion somehow. And while I love digging into all these Easter eggs and changes made throughout the season, you can also check my full-on analysis and deep comprehensive thoughts and review in this video right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks to all of our fantastic Patreons, and I will hopefully see you in that video. I have 3 videos now about the live action season 2, so there should be enough for you to consume, and we'll be back to regular manga related One Piece stuff on the weekends.